Hey guys, welcome back. Tisha here, back with another 50 Years in Polygamy review. Do me a favor, go ahead and hit that like button. It helps the channel. We are on chapter 56, For Better or Worse. This is years 2001 to 2002. Mark drove while I snuggled tightly against his legs and torso. Nearly all the way home, we planned our new, happy life together as we dreamed it would be 32 years ago, just before we got married. Wow, 32 years. Again, we received our list of ideals and made new pacts and promises to each other. We'd always be considerate, discuss and stick together on issues. We'd be completely honest, which he's never done since y'all have been married because he's not being honest about the Norma situation. So good luck with that. Choose each other over others and fall in love again. That day, all of the horrendous, regrettable, and mundane trials that shattered our marriage seemed totally illusionary in our minds. All we have to do is love each other enough, Mark repeated a few more times while we traveled northward. With all my heart, I chose to believe him. Piles of snow concealed most of the yellow grass and overgrown weeds in my flower beds. The first glance reminded me of more things left undone and gone to ruin. Pangs of resentment flooded in. Yeah, because it's real easy for you to say that you're going to forget this and you're going to start over, but you're walking into a situation where your husband has neglected your household all because he's chasing some cookie. And now here you are once again to pick up the pieces. Mark, Norma, Jared, and I haphazardly parked most of my things in the middle of the front room until I could decide where everything should be put. Then I took a tour of my home as if I hadn't been there in years. Other than a vase of yellow and orange daisies Keith and Anne placed on the table with a welcome home note, my upstairs kitchen felt icy and impersonal. Their bedroom arrangements reflected their personalities and comfort zones. I just smiled. I was saving the best part of my tour for last. I could hardly wait to move back into my beautiful new basement again. Like a child in anticipation of Christmas morning, I descended to the bottom of the stairs. I could barely push the door open all the way. The whole room was full of my sister's Amy's household furnishings. My gorgeous bedroom was filled with her belongings as well. So where is Mark sleeping? I sat on the only bare space of my beautiful purple carpet and cried. She'd known for months I was moving back home in December. Apparently, she didn't care one single bit. She'd taken her body back to her marriage and left everything else in my way. Mark sat next to me on the floor. "Don't worry, Sophia," he said. He just couldn't call me Kristen. We'll have all of this out here in no time. He could have called her that. He just didn't want to. Let's be honest, in order to change your name, once you change it, people should respect it. I have a cousin that changed her name and she just didn't like her name and it didn't fit her. And she changed her name as soon as she turned 18. And we as a family respected her decision immediately and called her by her name, which she made her middle name her actual name and she got rid of her first name. So it's not that, it's not that challenging. You may slip up sometimes, but he doesn't seem to be trying. When I called Amy, she said she and her husband had Christmas shopping to do and a zillion other things that had to be done. They wouldn't be able to move their things out of my way for at least 2 weeks. Mark and I cuddled under a pile of soft blankets in our wonderful king-size bed while I cried in anger at my sister for being so obtuse about my situation. I tried to smother my overwhelmed feelings with sleep. My to-do list is a mile long. Move all my stuff back in, move Amy's things out, clean, scrub, do laundry, buy groceries, and a few Christmas gifts. Plan a family party with who? Angry kids? With what money? Just shut up, Kristen. Just shut up and go to sleep. The next day, I packed Amy's things as fast as I could while Mark, Jared, and Keith loaded and hauled 2 heaping truckloads of boxes and furniture back to Amy's house. When we were half when we were a half truckload away from being finished, Mark said he had to leave. The threesome had a dinner date, he said. I needn't be worried. He helped me get... Wait a second. She's still trying to do things and y'all have to go because y'all have a dinner date. Who's the dinner date with? Why isn't she included as a part of the dinner date? This is the stuff that doesn't make sense. I needn't be worried. He'd help me get the rest of Amy's things moved out of my way within a few days. I must have stood there in shock with my jaw dropping to my chest. I was so used to Mark's ill treatment by then. I must have begged for it. Just like my mother, I too must have exuded victim. Here I am, Mark. I came back to you so you can tromp on my heart and wipe your feet all over my face. If his and Norma's big plan to help us work things out while protecting Diane's friendship and happiness meant keeping us apart, along with the lies, secrets, and deceit like the whole previous year was full of, Mark should have been honest and decent enough to have told me right up front. At least I could have consciously agreed or disagreed with their plan before I went back to his bedlam. And if I'd have been listening to my soul as much as I wanted to believe I had been, I would have told Mark right then, enjoy your life without me. For the next 3 weeks before Christmas, Mark's waking hours with me were infrequent. See, he didn't even try here, y'all. But we already knew this. I saw it in the comment section. We already knew that he wasn't going to be doing what he was supposed to be doing. He spent most of his time working with and hanging out with his best friends. He said he was sleeping on Norma's couch. Didn't I say, where was Mark sleeping if all her sister's stuff was in her bedroom like that and occupying all that space? He wasn't sleeping on her couch. He was probably sleeping with her. And here you are, his wife, who he wanted to come back so badly, and he's treating you like you're to help. But she'd allowed it. Now and then he'd climb in bed with me in the middle of the night to cuddle, make love, or just sleep. He convinced me to believe the reason he couldn't stay with me more was because he needed to make his divorce from Diane as easy as possible on her so she wouldn't fall apart. So are you staying at Diane's? Because I'm confused here. Diane doesn't know what's going on at your house. Are you telling Diane that you're going to Norma's every night? Like, what are we doing here? Or are you doing the same thing with her that you're doing with Diane? She's a good person, and I just can't hurt her more than I already have, Mark said. Please hang in there with me. All I want is for us to work this out. It will take some time, but it will happen. So much for that list that they made in the car on their way back. The sooner I can finish things with Diane the right way, the faster we can be together forever. I reminded myself he liked and deserved his space and freedom, and that's what I wanted for him. And in the too many minutes my heart was breaking from his ignorant choices, I determined not to have any expectations. I would have to agree to deal with things the way they were, or I would have to move on. On Christmas Eve, Mark took Keith and me to Norma's house to see her ornate and elaborate Christmas village. Mark showed off every detail of Norma's collection of many years, while Jared bragged about how the nonstop days on end collaboration took Mark and Norma. The days on end collaboration it took Mark and Norma to lay out her beautiful arrangement. So you're over there helping her do all of this stuff. Meanwhile, what are you doing in your home? Because she's still trying to get settled and you're over here helping her. The cramps in my gut from anger and jealousy were masked by my oohs and ahs. I ain't faking it. Then on the wall behind me, I noticed a picture of Norma posing under a bristlecone pine tree, one of the many Mark had snapped many months ago. She fussed about how Mark had it enlarged and framed. Something this and something that. Most of her words came and went, the proof of their lovely vacation. Jared and I were so privileged to chaperone, cut, and sliced at my stomach. I was busy holding on so I wouldn't throw up. I was so good at keeping sweet and pretending that I resented the hell out of me. At 3 in the morning, tiny green Christmas lights reflected on my wet cheeks. I set a few more gifts next to our grandchildren's under the tree. I knew Ann and Keith would understand. So would the other kids. They were used to our meager holidays, interspersed. Okay, interspersed. I always say that word wrong. With excessive or sufficient ones through years gone by. All morning long, I smiled, silently reviewing my long list of things to be grateful for. I even conjured up some more to help dissuade my blues. No matter how hard I tried every single year to change my frame of mind and experiences, especially for the kids' sakes, Christmases were always full of anxiety. Around 9:30 on Christmas morning, I held in my tears and asked Mark to at least get up long enough to watch the gift exchange. Anne opened her snoreboard and helmet from her boyfriend and the costume jewelry Mark and I had bought for her. Keith got to unwrap a few pairs of pants, a couple of shirts, and some desperately needed underwear. Then Mark went back to bed. Throughout the morning, all of our kids arrived except Jake. He hadn't spoken to me since I became the witch who ruined our family. Why is she being blamed for what he did? Is this what the men in the community do? Like, who comes up with the fact that she's to blame? Oh, yeah, their religion. Around noon, we had our traditional Christmas brunch of ham and egg sandwiches. Mark got up, ate a few bites, and socialized for a little while before he announced his planned departure to Diane's for her Christmas dinner with Jared and Norma's family. He's still with Diane. By 2:30, all of my children and grandchildren had gone in different directions to celebrate with other loved ones, and she probably was left by herself. I encouraged Mark to take Keith with him so he has something to do and family to hang out with. When Mark left, he said he'd be back in a few hours. In the quiet solitude, it felt as if 100-pound bag of sand had dropped on my chest, preventing me from breathing. For the first time in my whole life, I was completely alone Christmas Day. Other than having Mark to herself, Diane's secret dreams appeared to be coming true. My kids, grandchildren, Diane's kids, Jared and Norma's kids, and Mark were all together at her house without my presence. In the frozen silence, my head throbbed from the past 3 weeks of restrained emotions. I plopped down on my bed and gave myself time and permission to lament every morsel of rejection, hopelessness, and self-pity I've been feeling for so long. Then I kicked in the reality department and pulled myself through again. I had so much to be happy about. Girl, the way that she goes from this place where she's being honest with her emotions to, oh my goodness, I got to keep sweet, so let me do this, is so crazy to me. From the past many experiences, Mark's words about returning in a couple hours really meant 5 or 6 or not at all. So I wouldn't expect him until much later, maybe 8 or 9. To expect or hope for anything had been my mistake from day one in our marriage. Either one of those verbs got me in big trouble on too many occasions, so I strove not to care about or to count on anything. I didn't dare expect, wish, or even hope Mark cared enough to keep his word that time either. Around 6:30, Mark called to tell me he was almost ready to leave, so he'd be home soon. By 9:30, I was exhausted and satisfied. I proudly noted my sum of grand accomplishments in the 6 hours since I dragged myself up and decided to keep busy. Trying to remain sane had helped me rearrange my room, clean out drawers, shelves, and cupboards around the house, wash and fold piles of laundry, and scrub and wax the old linoleum floor in the kitchen on my hands and knees. This is what she's doing on Christmas Day because she's all by herself. And her husband isn't considerate enough to cut his time short and come back at a reasonable time to be back with his wife, who had to drag him out of bed just for that little moment in time to watch them open up gifts. And we didn't hear her say that he got her anything, so we'll see. I showered, put on my pajamas, and desperately tried to ignore the pounding, throbbing pain, making me want to scream out loud. I watched TV, read, and wrote to rid my mind of the angst I was feeling all over again. From our picture window, through the pasture in our backyard, I saw the lights were still on at my dear friend's Racine's home. Though it was 10:30, I called her, threw on some sweatpants and a coat, and ran over while she poured raspberry wine into a beautiful Christmas goblet. I knew I wouldn't be able to say one word or my emotions would explode. You're dying inside, Kristen. I can see it all over you. What on earth is going on? She asked. I lost it. After 5 minutes or so of uncontrollable sobbing, I confessed more heartaches than she'd ever heard during our therapeutic hikes and walks over the past few years. By 11:30, I gathered the strength in the warmth and safety of her friendship to meander home. I was glad Mark looked and sounded like he was asleep. The old familiar nausea was back again. I didn't know how I was supposed to feel or not feel, what I should or shouldn't say. No matter how I might attempt to express my feelings, I'd be in trouble. So I wouldn't. I gently climbed in bed, hoping not to touch or wake him. I didn't want him to touch or hug me either. He didn't, thank God. The energy was cold and tingly. All I could think of was getting to sleep as fast as I could so the day would be over and gone. What did you do today? Mark asked suddenly. I couldn't answer. My mouth wouldn't even open. Does he really want to know? I wondered. Can't he see? Does he really care? Finally, in an effort to keep sweet, I told him, just kept really busy. What did you do? He asked again. Are you an idiot? Are you blind? I wanted to scream at him. Instead, I said in a trembling voice, a whole lot of things that needed to be done. I'm really tired and I want to get some sleep. You're mad at me, he snapped. I'm not so much mad as I am. I know you're mad. You're mad because I didn't stay home and kiss your ass like you wanted me to. This is crazy. She's not trying to go back and forth with you. The girl just wants to go to sleep. And here he is being emotionally abusive again. He's so annoying. Norma said you'd be really pissed because I stayed longer at Diane's than you thought I should, and you weren't invited. After a few minutes of silence, he started again. You wouldn't have gone even if you were invited, Sophia. I don't think I'm as much as mad as I am. I tried to explain. I know you are. Don't even try to deny it. I was really hurt and alone, Mark intruded. You are too mad at me. I can tell you are. You're always mad if you don't get your way. If I'm not where you think I should be, where you think I should, then you're mad. I'm sick to death of kissing your ass. Goodness gracious, she didn't even do anything. And here he is starting with her because Norma put this thought in his head. Girl, get out. Get out now. We want you to get out. We're tired of seeing this man treat you like this. If you don't get exactly what you want when you want it, you go into one of your pouting fits. Well, I'm effing tired of it, he says the actual word. I'm not putting up with your bullshit any longer. I was appalled by his hostility towards me and the accusations that spewed from his mouth. He shot out of bed and stuffed some things into his carry-all bag and then walked out the bedroom door and slammed it. He had no intentions to stay there. This was him picking a fight so he could go back to where he wanted to be. Because it didn't make any sense. If she got in the bed and she was quiet, why even do this? He knew what he was going to do. Soon I heard his truck door open and slam shut. The engine revved up and the gravel flung across the driveway. I cried all through the night into the wee hours of the morning. Mark had slammed the door on my heart again. What, I wondered, were his anger and deception really about? Why did he say he wanted us if he couldn't and wouldn't honor even one of his renewed commitments? Maybe Lau was right about what he told me last fall. Mark can't see your feeling past his nose because his ego and his dick's doing the thinking when it comes to Norma. I'm with him. I'm with Lyle. Mark had loved Norma when she was a teenager, and it was blatantly clear he loved her now. Men who were having affairs were known to flip out. Also, some men who were once nice to first and previous wives had also become crazy and abusive to them after taking another wife. Hello, Cody Brown. Hello, this is Cody. Two of my close friends had gone through that very thing. Their husbands had sudden outbursts, made terrible accusations, and behaved outrageously, particularly when a woman tried to confront or question her husband about his conduct. It had become clear, even if Mark wasn't having intercourse with Norma's body, he certainly was with her mind. So what in the hell was I still doing there in their way? The day after Christmas, my puffy red eyelids drooped so much I could hardly see. Mark was right about one thing he said that night before. I wouldn't have gone to Diane's house even if she had invited me. I had no doubt I wasn't welcome there. She hadn't been welcomed in my home either. At least I didn't show up uninvited. I chose to respect Diane's wishes, and that was the only truth in Mark's 5-minute long tirade. Christmas Day and night, Mark set the precedent for the first year. I began to realize with every aspect of my being, it didn't matter what I felt, said, or did. A force much more powerful than Mark or me had already invaded our aspirations of reconciliation. It was obvious neither one of us was wise enough or courageous enough to wrangle with God's persuasive control and fight for our marriage. Chapter 47, Places in Hell. This is January through June 2022. Throwing a huge New Year's party for my grandchildren was the best way to avoid the feelings and conflicts hounding me. It didn't surprise me Mark stopped by to see what was going on. He said he had a few more of his things to pack and he'd be back in the morning at last to haul the rest of Amy's boxes over to her house. I was sure this was just an introduction to another apology. The next day, in anticipation, I canceled my morning hike with my friend and waited for Mark's arrival. You shouldn't have did that. By 3, when he still didn't show up, I ran a few errands and returned in haste, hoping we could spend some time together. When I got home, he had said he wasn't feeling good. He slept until nearly 7 and then hurried off to another appointment he said was none of my business. Mark returned after midnight. He asked if he could climb into bed with me and talk. He apologized again for his bouts of anger and for his ongoing absence. My insides felt twisted and tangled while he explained or dismissed his behaviors and choices with almost the exact same words Norma had used the previous day. Obviously, they had already discussed his fight with me in detail. Norma begged me to meet her for lunch so she could explain a few things and make them clear. There's nothing that Norma needs to make clear. Norma needs to stay out of their lives, out of their business. I'm going to be honest. There are things that go on in my relationship that my friends will never know because it's not their place. You have to keep some things to yourself. And I just feel like when you put other people, especially in a marriage, and I'm not married, so I can't talk about a marriage, but I feel like certain things have to be sacred between you and your partner. And if he doesn't hold that and he's sitting here telling another woman all these things, another woman who he loves, who he obviously is being inappropriate with, your marriage is doomed. I was still pathetically gullible and people-pleasing, and I wanted her to understand where I was coming from, so I showed up. She declared she knew and understood all of the difficulties and issues between Mark, Diane, and me. She also claimed to be extremely keen about the particulars of the personalities of everyone involved, including our children. Norma said she and her siblings had gone through her mom and dad's divorce when she was a child, and she had suffered through Callie's, her ex-sister wife's, divorce from Jared nearly 20 years ago. Therefore, Norma said, it's best to keep Diane and all of your kids in the dark concerning his decision to keep you in his life while choosing to divorce her. It will kill her if she finds out he wants you to stay with him when he's tried so hard to make it clear to her that he's through with their marriage. Girl, lying isn't right. And if this is what you're doing, then you're just going to cause even more conflict. Norma is very much so the reason why this is even more complicated than it has to be. You want the man, just say it. And he should go be with you. I sighed. Norma, I told you when you first talked to me about keeping your death a secret from Diane and Jared, and I've told Mark a zillion times. Truth to me, yes, is always better than lying under the guise of protecting someone. I would rather have the opportunity to make a decision based on truth rather than to deal with the lies I might find out about later on. If Mark wanted to stay with Diane and not me, I would want him to tell me. That way I could move on, go through the pain, get it over with, and live in truth. It's not that I don't try to get her to wake up, Norma said. I tell Diane, or at least hint to her a little at a time. Mark won't be coming back to her and she needs to take care of herself and move on. But Diane refuses to hear it because she wants to believe Mark will come back to her once he gets over you. She doesn't want to know the truth. Believe me, she couldn't handle it. So the same way she's saying Diane couldn't handle the truth, understand, Kristen, she's saying you couldn't handle the truth. I'm reading between these lines here. We need to go slow and protect her and the kids from finding out about Mark's feelings, or it will break all of their hearts. I can understand both of you, all of us wanting to protect Diane from her pain, and I certainly do not want to hurt our kids either. However, all of the cover-ups remind me of nothing more than the same old plural marriage lies polygamous men regurgitate and tell their wives, and then they agonize over it. Husbands, I'm sure, have to lie to one or more of his wives to keep out of trouble with the others. They make up stories to save face, appease each other, and avoid unwanted pain. Such are the normal idiosyncrasies of plural marriage. Each wife hears the same old stories from him. She believes she's the most loved and adored, while the other wives are the troublemakers and the selfish ones. And she, in most cases, wants to believe his defensive fabrications. She goes on trying to keep sweet for the sake of survival and to be in harmony with her husband. It didn't matter I disagreed with Mark and Norma's choice to mislead Diane or about any of their decisions. Just how long, I wondered, would they continue that duplicity? Would it ever end? It would probably never make a difference in Diane's heart. All three of us were sure Diane would never be able to accept Mark and me together without her. So at lunch, on the first day of 2002, Norma adamantly claimed her authority as a marriage counselor. Oh, Lord. She knew the ins and outs. Oh, I shouldn't have did that. Of everything plausible and even impossible. When it came to living and ending polygamous relationships, she had already been and was still very busy endorsing her own advice for the supposed good of everyone involved. Mark fumbled around his words while he tried to express all of the Norma's strong opinions in his own words. I tried to stay tuned in as he continued to explain in a variety of ways his misconduct was all due to his level of stress, his worries about the kids, Diane's feelings, and mine, which were more than he could handle, his inability to make ends meet, and the sad fact he just couldn't be with me as much as he liked to be. My thoughts had returned to Norma's sermon the day before when I wanted to reach across the table and slap her in the face. Oh, music to my ears. I'm not promoting violence, but I would have told her, I'm good. I don't need your advice. And I would have walked off. The ridiculous explanation she used to justify Mark's mistreatment of and cruelty to me made me sick. I wish her and Diane would just talk, because this is a mess. He's just weary of trying to protect Diane's feelings while trying to work things out with you, she said. And now on my bed, Mark was repeating the same justifications as to why it was okay to treat me like garbage while he was so concerned about protecting Diane. But more than anything, he said after a while, I want you and me to be together forever. No, girl, go. I want us to work out. Please wait for me, Sophia. Don't hop on that runaway train again. Girl, don't hop, run, leap, skip, zoom. Wait for me to finish things up with Diane in the right way so I won't have to hurt her more than I already have. She can't know I'm with you or that I want to stay married to you. It would tear her apart. Nothing that he said in that car was true. I know it will hurt her, I told him, but how can you expect our marriage to work if you're hardly ever with me and you're cussing angry and you're cussing angry about made up crap when you are here. I don't know how to do all of this, Mark explained. I just know I want to grow old with you. Norma says we're twin rays and you and I should be together forever. So why are you with her? Because of what Norma's saying? Because it sounds to me like you don't really want to be with her either. Like you're just holding on to her because of what Norma says. And because Norma's a coward and Norma isn't getting out of her marriage when that's what she really wants to do. Like most totally insecure, addicted to abuse, crazed women in unstable relationships, I melted. Yup. Mark's words of love and passion, of grief and longing found their way into my dream world. It's so sad how easily he gets her. Again, we conversed for hours about our long-term goals, a smaller home out in the country, retirement, visits from our kids and grandchildren. We made new vows and commitments to each other. You just made them back in December and now you're making them again in January? Wow. And I fell back into his arms to stay, hope, and wait. When Mark granted me fragments of his leftover time, I made every effort to be with him, while his time became less and less our time. I filled my life to the brim with my online class, student teaching, dancing, family, and friends. I determined I'd do anything to be happy, healthy, and strong, while I waited for him to finish things up with Diane in the right way. Near the end of February, I was amazed when Norma decided Mark could stay with me for 4 nights in a row before I left for Oregon. How does Norma decide? You know what? How will they hide this one from Diane, I wonder? My brother James bought me a getaway ticket to visit him and his wife. They took me everywhere. We compared our perceptions of being raised in the same household with the same 2 parents under the duress of dad's other wives. For the first time in my life, I heard an in-depth version of Pieces of Hell only a polygamous husband knows. My heart ached as James recalled his past marriage to his 3 wives. From the outside, everyone thought things in my family were great. All of us put on a good front so no one, not even you, would know about how bad things really were. But my wives fought like cats and dogs, James said. They didn't want to live together, and we were seldom happy. The very people I loved the most had little or no love for each other. The more tension there was at home, the more I wanted to run away and leave. Tears filled his eyes. And you know what, Kristen? No matter what I did, no matter how hard I prayed or how many meetings I attended, or how hard I tried to be a good priesthood leader and to do everything right, nothing ever worked. Not one of us was really happy. If I wasn't doing what they thought I should do, they fumed for days. No matter how many hours I worked, no matter how much money I made, or how much time I did or didn't spend with someone, there was never enough of me or my money to go around. Someone was always pissed, jealous, and wanting to leave. And most of the time, James almost shouted. I was so damn depressed, I could hardly function. I felt like such a failure. I wanted to be out of the lifestyle or die. Sometimes I truly envied the dead. That's heavy. That is heavy. When life is that stressful that he couldn't go to one of his wives because of all the things that were going on, to the point where he envied the dead, that's a big statement, y'all. James' remorse shifted through my guts like an auger with razor blades. In his feeling and words, I saw a lot of resemblance to Mark's life with Diane and me. Girl, don't feel sorry for Mark. I always knew Mark needed and deserved his freedom from that kind of craziness. Diane and I were both insecure and needy women. We wanted his devotion to God, his love, and his attention. In many ways, Mark, as a good man, brought up to believe he had to live polygamy, was just as unsatisfied, tormented, and full of grief as we were. No, he wasn't, because it's a different situation. Because there was a lot of times where you weren't doing things, where you allowed them to walk over you. But here we go. She's going to relate it to herself. My sister wife and I felt and watched him flee the scene over and over again. He too had been depressed, angry, and dying. James' words keenly extended my perspective of a male polygamist's torment. It brought to my awareness much more than my own sorrows and woes. Mark and I were still together when I got home, at least in heart and spirit. Nothing had changed in the 6 days I'd been gone. Every day, all day, and most nights, aside from his job, he was gone. He continued to work for, travel with, and mingle with Norma and Jared and their children. He made himself readily available to comfort and soothe Norma's broken heart anytime she fretted over her advancing death. This girl ain't dying. If her spirit guide were right, she had less than a year to live. If her spirit guide were wrong, Norma would surely come up with another explanation to explain Mark's spiritually required friendship and devotion to her. In between all the drama, I was sure I'd made a mistake trying to be in Mark's life without Diane as his wife, and when Norma was running the show, and with Norma running the show. But he guaranteed me it wouldn't be long before things would be resolved. If I take things slow, Diane will be secure enough that we can soon be open about our relationship, he said. Though somewhere in my soul, I believed our efforts were in vain. I clung tightly to his promises and forgave his continual distance and neglect. Through March, while he stayed in our daughter's basement, Mark and I acted like lovers on the make. We got together whenever, wherever, and however we could. In private, we enjoyed our delicious conjugal visits immensely. In public, around those we knew, we were back to acting as if we were divorced. We immensely enjoyed those times of lovemaking with no fighting and no disapproval. She's a friend with a benefit. Whenever I saw Jared, he'd tell me how much he appreciated Mark's validation of his stories and his wisdom. Mark assured me of his appreciation for Jared as well. They love me, Sophia. They are the friends I've never had before. He was absolutely right. I certainly didn't want to complain about him having friends. For as long as I'd known Mark, I had longed for him to have the gift of true friendship. He deserved loyal friends who would honor and love him. Norma and Jared filled his empty cup and his ego to the brim. In their eyes, he was near perfection. No matter what he ever did or didn't do, he was and would always be justified. Jared is a coward too, because he knows he doesn't like this stuff, but he's, putting up with it. So I don't care what Jared thinks. Still, I couldn't understand why he continued to spend so much time with them and away from me, and why he was so deceitful about it. I'd plead with Mark to explain things to me. If you want our marriage to work out, why do you lie and keep secrets from me? Why am I excluded from 98% of your life and time? It would be easier to wait with every 20%. It would be easier to wait with even 20% of your time. Instead, the only time we get alone is if you want sex. Why do you let Norma run your life and make our decisions? Asking for clarification didn't work. It made Mark angry and defensive. I forced myself to ignore my concerns and disapproval and kept on keeping on with my own life. The few times Norma decided I could be invited to join her, Jared, and Mark, she reminded me of the importance of not letting Diane know we were all together, especially that I was with them. This is ridiculous. She's too jealous, and all it will do is cause trouble, Norma would say. But within minutes, she would boast again of her skill at eluding Diane in any way she wished to. She never knows what I'm up to unless I want her to know, Norma bragged. I've told my kids exactly what they should and shouldn't say whenever Diane calls the house. They've gotten really good at it. You just watch, Norma laughed. She'll call while we're sitting here eating. She calls me several times during the weekend to check up on me. This was just exactly as I surmised. Norma admitted Diane never knew about their outings, yet she and Mark continued to exclude me. With that factual information verified by Mark, I knew I could no longer trust any of their contrived reasons to constantly exclude me. Finally, I asked Mark, what does your secret life with Norma have to do with making things easier or better for Diane? And how does your whole life being consumed by Norma help you, Diane, or me? None of this is right, and you know it, Mark. As usual, he accused me of being nothing but a selfish, jealous bee again. He raged at me as if I were a lunatic while he defended Norma. Nothing she is doing or saying is wrong. She loves you, Sophia. She would never do anything to hurt you. But each time Mark launched his pile of toxic refuse at me, slammed the door, and left me covered in his vile debris, it was more evident why he said such mean things and whose words were really coming out of his mouth. That was not Mark's vernacular. It hadn't been in years. He began to eat, think, breathe, and speak. Norma. He doled out her exact words and phrases every time I saw him. Between his new googly loogly gook. What? Gobbledygook. Gobbledygooky. I don't know what that is. I think it's a made-up word. GOBBLEDYGOOK. New perceptions, abusive accusations, and my pain and tears. He couldn't tolerate each other, and we couldn't tolerate each other anymore. We'd fight. He would disappear. Then he'd come back anywhere from a few hours to a few weeks later to repeat his worn-out old apologies. When we were alone, he'd tell me he never really meant the terrible things he said. He knew I wouldn't do anything. He knew I wouldn't do and be all the horrible things he accused me of when he was raging mad. As always, he promised to be loyal and more attentive, and as always, I forgave him. We'd make up, have sex, and fall in love with the idea of being in love and with the idea of living the rest of our lives in bliss. Then we were fighting again. This is a merry-go-round of trash, y'all. My student teaching, planning, and assignments and job hunting kept me away from social activities and friends. I was and felt so alone. The serenity prayer became my constant mantra during those 4 long months. I nurtured myself as best as I could with nutritious foods, exercise, meditation, and breathing. But beyond and above all, I told myself as often as possible, don't ever expect anything from anyone anymore ever again. Take life one day at a time and take care of yourself, Kristen. No one else will or should. It seemed each one of our kids, as well as Diane's, had a different take on the bombshell that had been dropped in their pathways. They were used to years and years of old familiar polygamous lifestyle of their parents hanging in there through thick and thin. But according to some, Aunt Sophia had blown it to smithereens. My son Jake hadn't talked to me since the last part of November, unless he had to. So she's even keeping his secrets. I never heard from Diane's kids. On the other hand, the rest of my children seemed to keep on loving all of us, while they made an effort to stay in the middle ground and not take sides. I told them I hoped they would never feel they had to choose between us. In April, Mark and I didn't celebrate our 32nd anniversary. He said he couldn't. He was too busy remodeling Norma's kitchen, along with all of her other projects and requests. So you can't take care of our house, but you can go to her house and take care of it. There's no way I'd be able to do this. It's no big deal. We can celebrate it later when we have more time and money, he told me nonchalantly. So you're doing all this stuff at Norma's and you're not even getting paid. I didn't even try to debate it with him. He didn't care enough to make some time for us. I didn't want to make it happen. I buried myself in a tub full of hot water and allowed myself to lament. When Mark and I were communicating, we decided it would be best to sell our dream house and buy a smaller home, one we could keep up with and pay for. Since our bills were still unpaid and our debts were beyond belief, we agreed to selling would be the best way to go. I'd already maxed out all my credit cards to keep us afloat, and something had to be done before we lost the house completely. We knew there was no way anyone would want to buy our junkyard for anywhere near what we needed. Something had to be done about the back half acre that was still an eyesore and an embarrassment. So you've never, after all this time, taken care of this house. Others have. Your wife did some stuff. The neighbors did some stuff. And here you are at someone's house doing all these other things. Over the years, I laboriously cleared portions of it. Laboriously. How do you say it? That word. Cleared portions of it for the planned little playhouse, swing set areas, sandboxes, gardens. Those areas were nowhere to be seen. They did nothing more than serve as more often space for Mark and Sons, family and friends to pile more rubbish, scraps, batteries, and broken down, good for someday, refuse, and masonry equipment. Mark's brother-in-law, our knight in shining armor, came to our rescue. He drove down our long driveway and hauled his bulldozer off to his glistening gold trailer. He'd driven all the way up from St. George in southern Utah just to help conquer our junkyard battlefield. It took him 3 long days to rip out the elm forest that had taken over like weeds. With his front loader, he got rid of our 4 or 5 dumpster truckloads of garbage and completely leveled the back half of our land. Watching 20 years of rubbish disappear brought me to tears. I was overwhelmed with hope, gratitude, and relief. Mark and I owed our hero more than a king's ransom, but he knew we didn't have it, nor did he expect it. After his hard work and expensive labor, there was a good chance someone would want to purchase our place, which now had endless possibilities. When Mark came home and saw his battlefield had been overthrown, he was livid. What? He wanted the blocks, the cans, the old wheelbarrows, and the junk trees. He felt beaten and wounded. I had taken his brother-in-law up on his offer to help without consulting him first. Oops. Oh, well. I made the decision. It was planned and set in motion before Mark could balk and refuse the offer. I knew from 29 years of past experiences and Mark's someday dreams and promises, the property would never be cleaned up and turned into the wonderland we always talked about. It was the complete opposite. It got worse by the day. We would never have money to hire it to be done. Mark was also too proud to accept any offers of help. He was at least 100 times angrier with me that time than when I accidentally mutilated the large lilac bush in our backyard. As time passed, it was more obvious the months and years Mark had been spending with his new family was creating a total stranger out of him. His thoughts, words, and actions were their thoughts, words, and actions. His unpredictable rages towards me began to scare me and created even more mistrust for Norma's claimed good intentions. Things Mark had loved and appreciated and things he complimented me for were now twisted and contorted into me being a selfish, conniving, manipulative bee, all expelled from Mark's mouth like projectile vomit. Right from the start, Norma started telling me those things. "Oh, you're not so perfect. You were mean and conniving," Diane said. And I know, openly as well, behind my back, Norma ridiculed me and others. She complained about my cooking, my friends, my life, my feelings, my inabilities, and even assumed by her my thoughts and intentions. She often snickered along with the cutting remarks she tried to make sound like ongoing jokes. Yes, Sophia might not know who or where she is, but I love her so much. One apparently scissor happy day, I cut Mark's hair way too short. Norma convinced everyone, including Mark, I did it because I was mad at him. The haircut was to punish him, she claimed. She's a problem. Of course, not one single word I said to the contrary mattered. If Norma said I was mad, I was mad. She knew how to twist each tiny flaw, simple mistake, thought, action, good intention, misunderstanding, or decision I made so it could become Mark's battering ram, and each one serve to bolster his reasons to continually break his promises to me. I got a question. Who's worse, Norma or Diane? Put it down in the comment section. And I really, for those of you who normally don't say too much, and I still appreciate you, I want to know, who is worse, Norma or Diane? Because I'm beginning to think, my opinion is it's Norma. Because Norma isn't married to this man, and yet she's causing all of these issues. It's bad, y'all. I finished my early childhood class assignment and my student teaching. I went through several interviews and kept on with my life. Within a few weeks, a secretary in the Jordan School District office called to ask if I would take a long-term substitute position for a kindergarten teacher who was having pregnancy problems. I excitedly agreed. While I was filling out forms, I asked why they hired me over the phone out of 250 applicants, especially without requiring an interview with the principal. The receptionist told me, "We looked through all of the applications to find someone with a lot of early childhood experience. You had the most by far. We were also impressed with your high interview and test scores, but mostly because the kindergarten teacher liked your teaching philosophy." I took all of that and some of the nicest compliments I'd ever received, as well as a gift from my higher power. I was ecstatic about my first job as a certified elementary school teacher. In June, I proudly walked across the stage with all those young women and men I attended college with. At the very young age of 49, I could finally lay claim to a Bachelor's of Science degree in early childhood development and elementary education. Even better, I maintained my 4.0 GPA and graduated summa cum laude. What did I say? Didn't I say that this woman always doubts herself, but she knocks it out the park? You go, girl. Near the end of June, I was offered 2 teaching jobs within a 15-minute period. I was purple and pink all over to have been hired by one of my children's previous principals who worked at a school close to home. And that is the end of that chapter. Wow. A lot happened. A lot went down. You all tell me what you're thinking. And I know some of you have put it in the comment section and you want to know what the next book is. Ooh. I'm glad I didn't do it the other way because y'all know I don't edit and y'all don't need to see my address. You guys ready for the next book? This is for those who stick around. Breaking Free, How I Escaped Polygamy, the FLDS Cult, and My Father, Warren Jeffs. This is by Rachel Jeffs. And the reason why this book was next on the list is because I remember hearing a little bit of her story on escaping polygamy. And I saw someone else many videos ago make a comment about this book. Well, not this book, about her and how she had a book. And I was like, you know what? Let me see if it's on Amazon. And it was, so I ordered it. So this is the next book, y'all. I'm really enjoying Kristen Decker's book to the point where I kind of want to see if she has any more out there because she is a phenomenal storyteller. And I find myself getting upset and emotional. We've had laughs, we've had cries, we've had anger, we've had some, unfortunate triggering moments. We've experienced a lot in reading this book, and I just appreciate her being willing to give us this side of her story. If you haven't done so already, please like the video. It does help the channel. Until next time.